She cleaned the house every day, always alone, always in silence. She'd mopped the wooden floors until they gleamed like mirrors, dust paintings that never looked back at her, washed dishes she never used. For 7 years, Maria entered that empty mansion at 6 in the morning and left after sunset, never meeting the owner. But he was there. He always had been, watching her every move through hidden cameras, hearing every sigh, every prayer she mumbled as she scrubbed the floor on her knees. And the day she finally found out, everything she believed about dignity, work, and deservingness crumbled and rebuilt itself in a way no one, not even herself, could have ever imagined. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever worked so hard you forgot your own name, if you've ever doubted that someone truly sees your effort when no one is around, this story will cut through you in a way that will hurt and heal at the same time. Because what happened in that house wasn't just about a cleaner and a billionaire. It was about what happens when we finally realize we are being seen, even when we thought we were completely alone in the world. Before I continue this story, I want to ask you for one simple thing. If you enjoy hearing real stories that touch the heart and make us reflect on life, please subscribe to the channel. Every week, we bring stories like this about people who have gone through situations you might even be living through right now. Your subscription helps me continue bringing these stories, and I promise each one will be worth your time. Maria was 52 when she got the job at the mansion. She was petite, her hands calloused from years of washing and scrubbing, her shoulders slightly hunched forward as if carrying an invisible weight she could never set down. Her brown eyes were deep, but tired, the kind of tired that doesn't disappear with a night's sleep, because it comes from years of carrying worries heavier than any grocery bag. She lived in a distant neighborhood, in a 3-room house where the paint peeled from the walls and the smell of dampness competed with the cheap, floral perfume she sprayed every morning before leaving. The mansion was on the other side of the city, in a gated community where the gates were so high they seemed to want to separate two completely different worlds. Maria took 2 buses to get there. The first left at 4:30 in the morning, still dark, and swayed so much on the turns she had to grip the metal pole tightly to keep from falling. The second bus was emptier, and she always sat by the window, resting her forehead against the cold glass, letting the landscape change from shanty towns to skyscrapers, from skyscrapers to enormous houses with gardens that looked like parks. When she got off at the last stop, the sun was just beginning to lighten the sky, and she walked the last half-mile to the mansion's gate, feeling the weight of her old bag on her shoulder and the morning chill seeping through the holes in her worn coat. The mansion had 3 floors, 12 bedrooms, a pool no one used, and a garden so well maintained it looked artificial. The walls were white, the furniture dark and expensive wood, and everything had that smell of cleanliness mixed with loneliness, as if the place were waiting for someone who never arrived. Maria received the keys and instructions from a woman in a grey pantsuit who spoke quickly and didn't smile. "You clean the entire house every day. The owner doesn't live here, but he wants everything immaculate. Don't touch anything beyond what's necessary. Don't open drawers. Don't go into the office on the 3rd floor. Your salary will be deposited on the 10th of each month. Any questions?" Maria shook her head, clutched the keys, and felt the cold metal against her palm. She had no questions. She needed that job more than she needed answers. In the first few months, Maria cleaned the house as if it were a temple. She'd spend hours scrubbing the bathroom corners with an old toothbrush, dust the crystal chandeliers by climbing a ladder that creaked with every step, wash the windows until the sunlight streamed through the glass without encountering a single fingerprint, not a single rain spot. She talked to herself as she worked. She hummed old church songs, prayed in a low voice asking for health for her daughter who lived far away. For her granddaughter she only saw in photos on her phone. Sometimes she'd stop in front of a large mirror in the living room and look at herself. And in those moments she saw a woman who seemed smaller than she actually was, swallowed by the size of that house, invisible like the dust she had just cleaned. What Maria didn't know was that he was there. He always had been. Eduardo Almeida was 63 years old with perfectly combed grey hair, thin-rimmed glasses, and a fortune that fit into numbers most people didn't even know how to pronounce. He owned a hotel chain that spanned 4 continents, had apartments in New York, Paris, and Tokyo, but he chose that empty mansion in São Paulo to live out his final years, not because he liked the city, but because he wanted to be alone. Or at least, that's what he told himself. Eduardo lived on the 3rd floor, in a room Maria was never allowed to enter. He spent his days sitting in a leather armchair, reading old books, drinking coffee he made himself on an Italian machine that cost more than Maria earned in a year. But what he did most was observe. The mansion had cameras in every room. They were discreet, hidden behind picture frames, embedded in smoke detectors, camouflaged in light fixtures. Eduardo had installed them all after his wife died, 5 years ago. He said it was for security. But the truth is he couldn't stand the silence. And watching Maria work downstairs, hearing her voice singing softly, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallways, was the only thing that made that house feel less dead. He knew everything about her. He knew she always arrived 15 minutes early. He knew she saved half her lunch in her container to eat for dinner and save money. He knew that every Friday she stopped in front of the framed photo on the living room shelf, the only personal photo he left on display, a picture of him with his late wife in a flowery garden, and Maria always cleaned that picture frame with extra care, as if she knew pain resided there. Eduardo saw everything. And the more he saw, the more he noticed something that bothered and fascinated him at the same time. Maria cleaned that house as if it were her own. Not with the haste of someone who wants to finish quickly and leave, but with the care of someone who cherishes something they love. The notes started appearing more often, always in places only Maria frequented. Inside the cleaning supply closet, taped to the fridge where she kept her lunch, folded on top of the mop she left leaning against the wall. Your work transforms this house. You're more important than you realize. Thank you for existing. Maria kept them all. She took them home, hid them inside an old shoebox under her bed, and reread them every night before sleeping. She didn't know who wrote them. She figured maybe it was the homeowner, that mysterious man she'd never met, but who paid her salary on time every month. Or maybe it was someone from the security team who passed by the house occasionally. She wasn't sure, but it didn't matter anymore because those notes made her feel seen. And that was all she needed. Eduardo, on the other hand, was losing control. He knew he was crossing a line. He knew that watching Maria on the cameras, leaving notes, making tea, all of it was beyond acceptable, but he couldn't stop. Because Maria had become the only reason he woke up in the morning. He looked forward to her arrival time. He got anxious when she was late due to traffic. He celebrated internally when she found the notes and smiled. That smile of hers, shy, almost childlike, lit up his computer screen and filled the empty room with a light that came from nowhere. Eduardo started researching her life. He discovered she had a daughter named Renata, who lived in another state, married to a man Maria didn't like but pretended to in her Sunday calls. He learned Maria had a 6-year-old granddaughter she'd never met in person, only through video calls because plane tickets cost more than she could save. He found out her dream was to visit her daughter before she got too old to travel. And that's when Eduardo had an idea that could change everything, or destroy everything. One December morning, Maria walked into the kitchen and found something unusual on the table. It wasn't a note. It was an envelope. Thick, heavy. She picked it up gingerly, as if it might explode in her hands. She opened it slowly. Inside there was an airplane ticket, round trip, São Paulo to Recife, dated for the following week. And with the ticket, a note. "Go see your granddaughter. You deserve it." Maria sank into a chair, her legs no longer able to hold her. Her hands trembled, her eyes welled up with tears that spilled over without asking permission, soaking the paper, blurring the ink. She didn't understand. It made no sense. Who would do this? Why? "Who are you?" she cried out to the empty room, her voice thick with despair. "Why are you doing this for me?" Eduardo heard everything. He saw her fall apart right there in the kitchen, weeping like a child. And he wanted to come down. He wanted to hug her. He wanted to tell her he did it because she deserved it, because she was good, because she had transformed that dead house into a place where he could breathe again. But he didn't come down because he was afraid that if she knew the truth, it would all disappear. Maria didn't go to work the next day. For the first time in 7 months, she was absent. Eduardo stared at the blank screen, at the clock, waiting. 6 a.m., nothing. 7 a.m., nothing. 8 a.m., nothing. He started to panic. He thought he had gone too far, that she had been scared away, that she would never come back. But the next day, Maria returned. She walked in through the front door, put her bag in its usual spot, and went straight to the kitchen. She stood there, facing the table where she had found the envelope. And she spoke, her voice loud, clear, firm. "I don't know who you are, but I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. No one has ever done anything like this for me. No one has ever seen me this way. I will accept this ticket. I will go see my granddaughter. And when I return, I want to meet you. Please." Eduardo heard, and for the first time in 5 years since his wife died, he cried. He cried because he realized he had spent so much time hiding, watching other people's lives through a screen, that he had forgotten what it was like to truly live. Maria traveled. She spent a week in Recife. She met her granddaughter in person, hugged her daughter, felt the sea breeze, and when she returned, she walked into the mansion with a smile on her face that Eduardo had never seen before. She cleaned the entire house, singing. She put fresh flowers in every room, and she left a note on the kitchen table. "Thank you for making me feel like I matter. Now it's your turn to come out of the shadows. I'm ready to meet you." Eduardo read the note, and he knew he could no longer hide. He walked down the stairs, crossed the hallway, stopped at the kitchen door. Maria had her back to him, washing dishes, humming a tune he knew all too well from hearing it so often. He took a deep breath. "Maria," he said. His voice was weak, trembling. She turned around. She saw a man with greying hair, thin-rimmed glasses, hands in his pockets, his eyes filled with fear and hope. "I'm Eduardo," he said, "the owner of the house, and I need to apologize." Maria stood still, processing, trying to understand. "Apologize for what?" she asked. Eduardo swallowed hard. "Because I've been here the whole time, on the 3rd floor, watching you through the cameras, listening to you, leaving the notes, preparing your tea. I know it's wrong. I know I invaded your privacy, but I was alone, completely alone. And you brought life into this house. You made me feel like there was still a reason to wake up in the morning. Silence. A silence so heavy it seemed to suck the air out of the kitchen. Maria crossed her arms. "You watched me this whole time?" Eduardo lowered his head. "Yes." "You heard me praying, crying, talking to myself?" "Yes." "And you never thought about coming down and talking to me like a normal person?" "I did. Every day. But I was afraid you'd leave if you knew." Maria took a deep breath. She looked at him, really looked at him. And she saw a man broken inside, trying to hold on to the pieces. She could have screamed. She could have walked out the door and never looked back. But instead, she said something no one expected. "Sit down." Eduardo blinked. "What?" "Sit there," she repeated, pointing to the kitchen chair. "I'll make some coffee, and you'll tell me everything." Eduardo sat. Maria made coffee, and for the first time in 7 months, they talked. Truly talked. He told her about his wife who died of cancer, about how he had built an empire but lost the only person who made it all worthwhile, about how he bought that house to be alone, but the loneliness almost killed him, about how watching Maria there every day, taking care of that space with such care, was the only thing that stopped him from giving up on everything. Maria told him about the years she spent working in wealthy people's homes, always invisible, always replaceable, about her marriage that ended when her husband left her for someone else, about the daughter she raised alone, doing laundry for others until her hands bled, about the loneliness of sleeping every night in an empty house and waking up knowing no one would notice if she disappeared. "I was alone too," she said, her voice low. "And your notes, as strange as it is to admit, saved me." Eduardo looked at her. "Even knowing I was watching you?" Maria gave a half smile. "You watched me, but you also saw me, and there's a big difference between those two things." They made a deal that day. Eduardo would turn off the cameras, he would stop hiding, and Maria would continue working there, but now they would have lunch together. They would talk. They would share that huge house that no longer needed to be a mausoleum of silence, and that's exactly what happened. Maria continued cleaning the house, but now Eduardo helped. He learned to wash dishes, to mop the floor, to water the plants. She taught him how to make cornbread. He taught her how to play chess. They had lunch together every day at the kitchen table, talking about everything and nothing. And slowly, that empty mansion began to transform into a home. Maria brought her granddaughter to meet Eduardo. He bought dolls, set up a playhouse in the garden, taught the little girl to swim in the pool that had never been used. Renata, Maria's daughter, visited too, and when she saw her mother smiling like that, with that light in her eyes she hadn't seen in years, she cried and thanked the man who had given her mother back. Eduardo set up a retirement fund for Maria. He put her name in his will. He renovated her house in the distant neighborhood, painted the walls, replaced the roof, bought new furniture. "You took care of me when I was broken," he said. "Now it's my turn to take care of you." 2 years later, Edward passed away, sleeping peacefully in his 3rd-floor bedroom. Maria was by his side, holding his hand, whispering a prayer. He opened his eyes one last time, smiled at her and said, "Thank you for teaching me how to live again." Then he closed his eyes. In his will, Edward left the entire estate to Maria. Along with a letter, "Maria, you came into my life as a housekeeper, but you left it as the most important person I've ever known. You showed me that being seen isn't about being in front of the cameras. It's about being seen by those who truly matter. Take care of this house, fill it with life, and never forget that you were always so much more than you imagined." Maria read the letter and cried. But it wasn't a cry of sadness. It was a cry of gratitude, because she had spent her whole life feeling invisible, and a lonely man hidden away on the third floor of an empty mansion had made her understand that she had always been seen. She had always mattered. She had always been enough. If this story touched your heart in any way, I sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't just tell stories. We create a space where real people share real struggles and find comfort in knowing they're not alone. Every subscription helps me continue this work, and I promise that every week you'll find a story here that will make you reflect, cry, smile, and above all, feel understood. And before you go, do me a favor. Write in the comments a single word that sums up what you felt listening to this story. It could be hope, it could be strength, it could be pain. It doesn't matter what it is, because every comment down below transforms into a chain of support for someone who might be going through the toughest time of their life and needs to know that people care. Type, "This story moved me," if you felt something. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end. It means more than you can imagine. Give this a like if this story resonated with you, and I'll see you in the next story. I'll be waiting for you here.